Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. Are you guys all there?
Morning, Doctor. Salam.
Thank you for the greeting. It's good to hear people's voices. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, only 9. Wow, we have a small class today. Hey, several of your friends mentioned that they're on their way back to UPM. Are they reopening the campus or what for students? Anyone know anything about that? I haven't heard anything about that.
They open to take things that they need
Oh.
at the college.
Oh,
So they're
okay.
going back, they give chance, going back and take the things that they need.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, okay. Oh, so some of you are also going today, I see. So they're just giving you, you can just do that today, or they're giving you like a period of time or what?
Only 1 hour we need to
Wow.
pack our stuff. Yes, they give if we wanted to take important things only. If we want to clear up our room, they give a time.
Ah, I see. Okay. Oh, within this week. All right. I
Yes,
see.
this week only.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think 2 or 3 of your classmates WhatsApped me and said that they had to do that. So, okay. Well, we will we'll get started. It's already after 11, so the others can join as they come in. Inshallah. Okay. So, wow, such a small group. Okay, so we're in week 10 now, and we're going to continue. Of course, we had our presentations the last 2 weeks. I apologize, I have not graded that assignment yet. It's the video, but the written assignment is really the main part of that assignment. I have not had a chance to grade that one yet, so I will be a little bit probably delayed in grading that assignment. I apologize for that. It's a very, very busy period right now. Sorry, Aisha, did you have a question or something? It was muffled. Oh, I guess not. Okay, sorry. So yeah, so assignment 2 will be a little bit delayed in terms of me getting it back to you, the grade. I apologize for that. It's a very, very busy period. We've got our master's students submitting their dissertations. We've got our final year project students submitting their final year projects. And you guys, I'm sure, are all busy preparing for your final year projects. I know some of you are in my group in this class. And I'm also involved in a intensive 5-week research boot camp. So there's just a lot of stuff going on right now, but I will try to get them back to you as soon as possible. But I do apologize for the delay. Okay, so let me first let me just share the screen here. I'm gonna put some Putu Blast. Can you guys see the Putu Blast? Is the Putu Blast showing up there?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, thanks. All right, so there you can see week 10. And just now we're just going to, do our introductions and housekeeping stuff. We're going to do a class a little bit differently today. Actually, today we're going to start with a video presentation. It's actually a video case study. It's a short one, just 10 minutes, of a really interesting community development project in the Philippines. And the reason I'm starting with a video rather than lectures, I want us to first look at an example, a real live example of a community development program, project, whatever, because I want us to situate our lecture about evaluation, community development evaluation. I wanted to situate it in a real life sort of example. So we're going to first start off the class with the video and a brief discussion about evaluation, and then we will have the lecture on evaluation. And I hope that lecture won't take too long, because at the end there's the class activity. I want us to sort of report out from the reading that I gave you last week about the habits of effective community development practitioners. I was hoping you do a little bit of reflection on your own selves for that assignment. And so we're going to use the Padlet link that I posted in the WhatsApp group. And I'm going to ask you later in the class to post the things that you learned from that article about your own readiness to become community development practitioners. Okay, and then we're going to display those and maybe have some discussion about that. Okay, so that is the plan for today's class. I don't know if we will use the whole 3 hours. We may adjourn a bit early today. We'll see how it goes. So are there any questions, or anyone have anything they want to share to start the class? Anything at all? Questions, comments, concerns? How are your final year projects coming, by the way? How's the progress? I think they're all due by the 30th, right? So you guys got about 12 days. Anyone want to share all your heartache related to final year projects? Nothing? No one? Middle of corrections. Oh, okay. Making corrections. Nadia. Okay, Nadia is my final year project student. Okay. That's good. So yeah, so next week will be a very busy week, I'm sure, for you guys regarding final year projects. So I will not be giving you any homework for next week. Don't worry. All right, so let's get going. So I'm going to first try and show this video. Hopefully it will work. I will just share the YouTube straight away. Let's see if I can do that. Let's hide this one. All right, do you guys see that? Do you see the YouTube screen? Is it showing up? I'm not looking at the chat, so you guys are gonna have to talk back to me. Can someone just tell me if you see YouTube?
Yes, doctor.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's watch it. It's only about 10 minutes. So just pay attention, try to catch, it's very clear, it's very clear, the language is very clear. But I just want you to focus on, as you see in the Pucha Blast, I raised 2 questions there I want you to focus on for this particular class. Evaluation. So what role did evaluation play in this project? The different types of evaluation. What different types or different approaches did they use in the program regarding evaluation of any kind? And see what you can kind of pick up from that. Okay. All right. So let's go. Let's watch the video.
Is a small community of around 100 people in the mountainous north of the Philippines. Its inhabitants have migrated here in search of land where they can build their homes and feed their families. People of Pangao are proud and hardworking, but they are also poor. Most families here survive on less than $1 per person per day. In 2011, the community approached the Episcopal Church of the Philippines to help them with a water project. The Episcopal Church of the Philippines is very experienced in helping communities to construct water and sanitation facilities. But the church is also concerned that external intervention brings long-term sustainable benefits to communities and doesn't inadvertently increase the community's reliance on external donors.
They come to us and say that they have heard from neighboring communities that the Episcopal Church has helped them put up a water system that is worth more than ₱1 million. The church has helped them even cement the part of the road going to the community. So they come to us with an expectation that we are give them a lot of resources. The problem has been with sustainability, because the problem is that if you are providing or addressing a need and providing an external input, in the community to address those needs, that will be what people expect. That every time that they have a problem, they have a need, then they will always look forward to an external input to address that. Eventually, we realized that the better way of approaching it is the biblical way, which is what's in there, what's in the community, what's the strength of the community, what are the resources of the community that would be able to drive development action there. So asset-based community development is basically looking at those resources, those available resources, and strengths, capacities of the community, and letting those things drive development action.
There is a new approach being introduced known as the asset-based community development. In this, we as the staff of this program also attended training at the national office, and then after the training, we also invited some community research volunteers. There were in this place, Pangaw, there were 3 who are interested to join with us.
We have seen that we have a few water supply. Siya di nang kinmamangan mi that what push us to go to the development community program of the church. We go to attend seminars like the ABCD seminar. Because it is one of the requirements. So we consult the community. What are those concerns and suggestions? After that, we take the asset mapping, the household survey, and we list what are the assets that we have in this community.
Through an asset mapping process that the community research volunteers learned in their training, the community began to focus on the strengths and skills that already existed in the community. This approach helped to identify hidden talents among members of the community, as well as to focus on the resources already present in the community, rather than waiting on an external party to come and intervene. Through this process, the community identified the value of their water catchment area and the need to preserve and protect this valuable resource.
Very important din danom aditan sa
water is very important to us because it is what we use every day in our houses. And also it is important to our plants. So really it's very important to us.
para anda kami din watershed mi kailangan
the watershed is very important for us to protect because it is the source of the water, and the trees they hold the water, and also that we are the one, the community are the one who is safeguarding the watershed from illegal loggers and from those who throw waste in the watershed.
One of the initiatives the community began immediately was a plan to take care of their water catchment area. With help from some external sources, they began a nursery to propagate native trees which will be used to reforest the watershed area. One of the major community decisions to emerge from the asset-based process was a commitment to raise their own funds within the community to build the new water system, so that the ABM funding could be used by some other community who had a greater need.
Idi nalpas di seminar di CRBs naunong kami idin sa nan plano kami ay
when the seminar of the CRVs were finished and the plan was shown to us, we have seen that maybe we can do this by ourselves.
Ta di ilan mi manmulat ako
because when we see it, we have seen that we can plant vegetables and other things, and every harvest we can give to the organization some funds from our harvest so that it will be used in the water works.
One of the more successful results of our ABCD engagement. People would still say, would still think that that they have failed because what they expected in the beginning was not what they got. So there, among some people, there would still be that feeling. But for them to come up with a collective stand and say that we can do this on our own is successful. Is what we also expected from the process.
The story of Pangal is a testament to the initiative and hard work of the people in this community. It also highlights the importance of the effective community development processes that the Episcopal Church in the Philippines has developed. The challenges of poverty are often harder to overcome than they first appear. ABM's partners bring tools and insight from a vast array of community development experience to ensure that development intervention helps rather than hinders the people who need it most.
Oh, okay. So did you all catch that? All right. Get this up here. All right, so who would like to, were you able to follow the story of the Manggao community there? It's an interesting story, and it's really a good, very short but very good highlight of what a community development initiative is really aimed at doing, which is what? Who can tell me? What's like that lawyer said at the end? What's the most important outcome of that process? Who can tell me? Anyone? Aini, are you volunteering to give the answer, or are you just? Okay, continuous water supply. Well, yeah, that was what they had set out to get, and in terms of the resource, yeah. Okay. What else in terms of like the lawyer referred to at the end? in addition to the actual tangible outcomes of the project, what did he see as the most important part of the whole project? So yeah, of course, the water supply is what they needed. So that's definitely an outcome, important outcome. What else? Anyone catch it?
The initiative from the community themselves.
Yeah, who was that? Was that Fatini?
Yes, this is me.
Okay. Yeah, it's that initiative. Through the process, they really transformed the community's way of not their way. It transformed the community's sense of ability, that sense of empowerment that they can do it on their own, right? So that is a real successful community development project, rather than the community remaining dependent on these outside people to come in and give them resources, which we often see in Malaysia, right? We often see this sort of dependency on either government or NGOs to come in and give people things. Then when the external agencies leave, the people are no better off than they were before. But a real true community development project rather, really helps people to become self-dependent, really, right? Independent. So they're not reliant on the external agency. So that's when a community developer, the practitioner, that's when they really know what they're doing. When they're able to not only help the community to get this resource that they're after, in this case, the water supply, but they're actually able to transform the community into becoming more independent and self-reliant, all right? And then so they used a lot of, as you can see in the video, they used a lot of participatory approaches. You know, the people were very much involved. They were very much leading the process, you know. So that's a really talented and very skilled community development team that undertook that project clearly. Okay, so yeah, so very good, Fatini. And then also, I mean, Huda, you're right. It was the water supply was what they wanted, what they needed in terms of the tangible felt need, right? We talk about felt needs, right, in class. So that was clearly the felt need, was that need for the continuous water supply. The unfelt need was the community's, you know, that ability, know-how, and sense that they could do it on their own, right? And that was the more of the unfelt need that the community development process gave them. So let me ask one more question about evaluation. Did you guys pick up on the different forms of evaluation that they did? Were you able to pick up any of the evaluation methods that they used? Anyone? Anyone able to pick up on the evaluation methods? Evaluation is of two main forms, right? Who remembers? Maybe from your other classes. What are the two main types of evaluation? Program evaluation. Anyone? Anyone? You guys don't remember? Yes, thank you, Nadia. Formative and summative. So they engaged in a couple of different forms of evaluation. Maybe Nadia, you can answer. Did you pick up in the video what they did in terms of evaluation? No? Okay, so they did a continuous evaluation, which would be a formative evaluation, by getting continuous feedback from the community members, right? But then in addition, they also did two main things. They did a household survey. They mentioned they did a household survey. They didn't really go into detail about what was in the survey, but they were trying to collect data about probably data about the families, about their skills, about their experience, about their income, all these things. And then they also did what's called an asset mapping activity. And I'm not sure if you guys picked up on what was asset mapping. Asset mapping, have you ever heard of asset mapping, anyone? What is asset mapping in context of community? They explained it pretty well in the video, I thought. Anyone want to take a shot? What is asset mapping? Are you guys awake? Are you there? I'm not getting any feedback. Okay, yeah, document of existing resources. Yeah, so what they do is they go around and they literally, by foot, they'll go around in the community and they'll literally list down all the existing resources or assets in the community. And why do they do that? They do that because they want to know what type of things they have that they can build on. So for example, they're very good at planting vegetables, right? So they know they needed water to plant all their vegetables, which is why they needed a water supply. But that vegetable ability to grow all those vegetables is a source of a potential source of income, and it can be built on. It can be further enhanced to give the community more or greater sources of income, right? So so they go around and they document all the existing resources in the community. Those become assets, which they leverage. They use those assets to create more resources in the community. Okay, so that's why it's called a strengths-based or an asset-based approach to community development, right? Asset-based, ABCD, asset-based community development. Okay. So evaluation in this case study was very useful for them. It was very, very important for them to do this mostly formative evaluation. They didn't talk much about the summative evaluation. It was mostly at the end of the project. It was mostly through observation that they observed these changes in the community, right? They didn't mention any sort of quantitative or sort of summative evaluation, but it was more of an observational evaluation, observational finding. Okay. All right. So any questions about that? About the video? About the? If not, we will proceed. Now we will move on to our the lecture notes on evaluation. Okay. So I just thought I would start off with a case study in order to put us in the right frame of mind, which is evaluation, talking about evaluation of community development programs. And of course, in all honesty, evaluation is not the most exciting topic in the world. So, which is why I sort of want to start off by showing you an example of it in practice rather than just talking about it theoretically. Okay, but now we will move more towards the sort of breaking what is evaluation down all about. Okay, so please feel free to ask any questions or stop me along the way. Okay. You guys don't seem very chatty today, but that's okay. I'll get it out of you somehow. All right. So let's talk evaluation. If I can get the slides to work. Okay, so what is evaluation? Well, we use this term all the time, right? But it has to have a meaning, right? And essentially, in the context of community development programs, or any kind of program really, basically with evaluation, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a judgment on the worth of a program. Okay, is the program worth doing? Yeah. So we have all types of programs that the government does, that the NGOs do, and I mean, everybody does programs, right? you guys do programs. When you're in Pasuma, you did programs. I'm sure you're doing programs now and all your other communities, associations that you're involved in. So how do we know that those programs are actually worth the effort and worth the money that we're spending on them? Well, we have to evaluate them, okay? So, okay, sorry, I'm just reading your comments here. All right, so we want to judge the value of or the worth of the program. It's really important that we do that. All right. So typically when we judge a program and its value or its worth, we want to base it upon some kind of evidence, right? So evidence is typically in the form of scientific evidence, right? So we want to know whether the program met its objectives, for example. Well, how do we know whether a program meets its objectives? There has to be some kind of standard or criteria that we use to determine that. And so typically we will undertake some sort of research, yeah, some sort of evaluation research, evaluative research, to provide evidence whether that program was effective. Evidence is not only in the form of quantitative evidence, like we need some sort of scores on survey scores or something. As the video just showed us before, evidence can also be observational, but it should be systematic, right? So it should be documented evidence, where, for example, those like in the previous study, in the case study just now, the program that a lawyer who was involved in the program from the beginning, he was able to see change in the participants over the course of the program, right? And I'm sure if they're a professional organization, that they will have documented what they have observed, right? So they will be looking for certain things, and they will be documenting what they have observed to indicate whether there's been a success, whether the program has been successful, all right? So judgment, it's all about judgment. So evaluation is just to determine, to judge whether the program has been a success, okay? So the meaning of evaluation is further strengthened by several characteristics, okay? So for example, I'm sorry, I'm playing with my windows here. All right, so it's a continuous process, right? Evaluation, if it's a good evaluation, if it's done well, it should start off from the very beginning. From the very beginning of the program, you should begin to evaluate, right? So, and then there's the midway evaluation and then the final stage. And Nadia helped us define what those are. The formative evaluation, starting from the beginning all the way to the end, which is really about the process, right? It's an evaluation of the process. Are we doing well in terms of implementing the program? Okay, and then there's evaluation at the end, which is to determine whether there has been a successful outcome of the program. Yeah. Evaluation is a learning process, okay? So for those who are involved in the program, the whole point of that evaluation, not necessarily to make a judgment whether they've run a successful program or not. That's important for like the people that are funding the program, people that are providing or hosting the program, the stakeholders and so, etc. But the participants themselves, they want to learn from the process. Yeah? So evaluation, especially the process or the formative evaluation, helps the participants to learn about what they are going through, right? And learn about the process of the program. So in the case study just now, you saw those excerpts, those video shots of all the people outside meeting together, and they're being led by a series of trainings or a series of, feedback sessions by the organizers. So that's the process where they're participating and they're learning, and through that learning, they become empowered so that they can later do it themselves, right? So evaluation should be done, ideally should be done along with the participants, right? It's not like the way we evaluate you as students, right? In university, when we evaluate you, we give you an exam at the end of the class, and then, of course, we evaluate you as we go along too. We give you some assignments and stuff like that. But we don't in fact, we should. We don't do a very good job of this. We don't do a very good job of providing you feedback on your sort of performance as the class goes on. So we do these assignments, but we don't really give you enough feedback on how you're doing and how you can improve. That's what a training or a program, a community development program would be doing. It would be helping the participants to improve as they go along, right? So when you think evaluation, don't think of just outcome, right? Think about process. How is the process going? Yeah, that's also what evaluation is about. All right. Any questions? So far clear, Jelas? Assuming you're all awake and not sleeping yet. Okay, no sleeping allowed.
Jelas, Doctor.
Thank you, Nadia. Okay, let's proceed. All right. So yeah, evaluation is a process of measuring performance, as I mentioned, including both strengths and weaknesses. All right, strengths and weaknesses. So we can build on our strengths. The community can build on its strengths and address its weaknesses. That's really important. It's not just looking at the negative. It's not just looking at what went wrong. Okay, that's not what evaluation is all about. Evaluation is not about what went wrong. It's about strengths and weaknesses. All right. It can be measured both using quantitative surveys. It can also be measured using, not measured. It can also be sort of assessed using qualitative approaches. Can anybody tell me an example of a qualitative approach to evaluation? Since you guys have all taken your class on research methods, so you should be familiar with some of the qualitative approaches to doing evaluation. Who would like to share? Anyone? Anyone? Come on. Qualitative approaches to evaluation. What are some? Yeah, thank you, Zuleika. Interview is one. What kind of interview specifically? Yep, very good, Farhan. Observing. So observations and interviews are both qualitative methods. Can anyone name another one? So Zuleika mentioned interview, and actually Farhan also interview. There's actually two types of interviews in qualitative research. Can you name them? Yep, there you go. Thank you, Zuleika. Very good. So you have one-on-one interviews, individual, what are called individual in-depth interviews, but you also have group interviews. And these are often referred to as, and I'll write in the chat box here, focus group discussions. Okay, focus group discussions. So focus group discussions are group interviews, but they're not like the group interviews that you might go for if you're like applying for a job, right? So you like sit around a table and then the interviewer asks each person in the interview, asks them individually. A focus group discussion is like if you're the moderator, you put out a topic or a question, and then you let the focus group participants to discuss it, right? So it's a discussion. It's not really a question and answer session. And then from those discussions, the researcher can really glean or get a lot of really interesting information. Okay, so that's another form of qualitative evaluation. So typically, a really good evaluation will involve both quanti and quali, as we call them, quanti and quali forms of evaluation. Can anyone tell me the benefit? What are the benefits of doing both quantitative and qualitative evaluation methods? Can you think about what might be the benefits of doing both? Okay, yeah. So like I said, one-on-one are a bit more specific. Everyone will be able to speak out their thoughts. Yep, that's true. That's true. I'll elaborate that in a minute, a little bit more in a minute. Yep. Let's see if anyone else has anything to say. Anyone else? The benefits of doing both quali and quanti.
If we use quantitative, we can reach more people.
Excellent, Fatini. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Quantitative methods give you the advantage of, yes, of having a larger sample. Yeah, having a larger number of respondents in the evaluation. That's absolutely true. Yep. Good. Anyone else? What else? You guys got it. Anyone else? Think about how they might complement each other. One uses numbers, the other one uses like insights, you know, like narratives, like stories, descriptions and stuff like that. Quality, two-way conversations give rich information. Yeah, Tracy Ann, very good. They do give richer information. Divya, more evidence can overcome the limitations. Okay, yep. That's true. They do overcome each other's limitations in some ways. That's very true. Yep. Thank you, Adila. That's good. More insight, more depth. Yeah. So they really complement each other very well. With the quantitative, you get a sort of generic response, right? So for example, if we ask the participants on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied they were with the program, the average, the mean score may be an 8. Okay, great. They seem very satisfied. So if I asked you guys, how satisfied are you with this class? You may say an 8 or a 9, and I'd be very happy, okay? But that wouldn't really tell me much other than your general sort of feeling about the class overall. If I sat you down after that and did a focus group discussion with you, say I asked 5 of you to come and have a group meeting with me, a group interview with me, focus group discussion. In that session, I can ask you, okay, so you guys gave the class a 9. Tell me what you liked about the class. You know, why did you give it a 9? And that's where I can get a lot of in-depth insight. I can get a lot of the sort of, you know, reasons why you found the class interesting or whatever. Maybe you liked the way I lectured. Maybe you liked the content. Maybe you found the content very user-friendly, very applicable to what you do in your work or what you plan to do in your work later. There could be many reasons why you like the class. And in some cases, some of you may even say, well, I didn't really like the class. But because the mean score was an 8, or the average score, right? My response of a 2 maybe was hidden in that quantitative score because it's a mean score, it's just an average, right? So the quantitative findings usually don't tell us what individuals think, right, about the program. So that's why when you use the two together, it's the most effective, okay? Does everybody see that? Is that clear to everyone? From your responses, I can see you guys, I think you have a good grasp of it. Okay. Okay, great. I see your comments there. Good. Okay, cool. So an ideal model evaluation involves input, output, and impact, right? So yeah, here what we're referring to is the inputs that go into a program, right? So if, for example, let's say you're going to do a program in some community, you're the government, you're going to do a program, you're going to do a urban farming program in a community in KL, and you've set aside 2.5 million ringgit for this program. You're going to set up an urban farm, okay, urban farming program. How do you know whether you're getting your the kind of output that you want, given the fact that you spend 2.5 million ringgit on the program? Okay, so that would be the input, right? The input would be the 2.5 million, the number of people that have to work on the program, the number of man hours that have to go into processing the forms, blah, blah, blah. A lot of inputs that go into that program, yeah? That community development program. And then you look at the output. What's the output? Well, maybe after a year, we set up a new farm, right? In, you know, maybe there's 3 small community taman, you know, there's 3 small kampong in the city, you know, urban kampong. And these 3 communities came together and they formed an urban farm, right? And so at the end of the year, maybe the output was they've set up the urban farm and they're producing, you know, 15 types of vegetables, and, you know, they've made 50,000 ringgit in profit, okay, or maybe not. maybe it was a total failure. That's the output, all right? And then we look at impact. We look at impact. So what's impact? What's the difference between output and impact? Can anybody tell me? Who knows? Who'd like to guess? Who'd like to share? The difference between output and impact. You can use the urban farming model example if you'd like, no problem. Anyone? The difference between output and impact of a community development program or a program in general. I'm watching the chat window to see your responses. Okay. Okay, output, more resources. Yeah. Okay, that's true. Why do you say output, more resources? Athira said impact is the outcome. Okay, so you introduced a different word there, Athira. You introduced a new term, outcome, right? So I said, yeah, output and impact, and then you mentioned outcome. Interesting. Okay. Impact, more skills. Okay. So Zuleika, you said output, more resources, impact, more skills. What's the difference between those two?
I think like output you can obviously see, but impact is like on the person itself throughout the training.
Okay, on the person's end. Yeah, you're close. I mean, I think you've got the right idea. So the output is what is immediately measurable, right? So once the program ends, what is the immediate output? So what have you produced basically? That's measurable, right? So like you said, more resources. Yeah, they've made, like I just said, and I was using that as a cue really, 50,000 ringgit in profit. It's immediately measurable. That's the output. But what impact does that 50,000 ringgit have on the community in terms of the community in the long run? And does that impact actually address the objectives of the program? Maybe the program wasn't to make a lot of money. Maybe the program was to, like you said, Zuleika, to inculcate skills into the people, right? We want the people to have more, what are they called? Certain type of skills that last. You know, there's those skills that last with you for the rest of your life. You know, so once people know how to do urban farming for the rest of their lives, they can be productive, right? Those kind of lasting skills. That would be impact, right? Or maybe the impact is that the community now is safer because everybody is always out in the community working on the farm. Therefore, there's less crime. Okay. So in the long term, one of the impacts of the program was that it reduced crime in the community, you know? Even though immediately at the end of the program itself, we wouldn't see that as an output, but it's something that developed, that occurred as a result of the program in the longer term, all right? Yes, Aini, very good. Change in behavior, yeah. Change in behavior in the long run. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so what changes? Yeah, the impact is really what changes, what really changes in the community. Okay, 400 to economy. Yeah, well, economy could, like I mentioned, it could be immediately, there could be immediate benefits to the program, like money they made in the farm. But your question about economy is a very good one because impact may be, yeah, the impact may be that we have this new localized economy where now these people are self-sustaining, right? Maybe they have a dedicated staff of 10 people now in the community that's working on this farm full-time, right? And people are buying and selling in the community. So they've actually developed a micro or a localized economy within their own community, all right? So that would definitely be impact. That would definitely be impact. Very good, yeah. Okay, so you can see there's a difference. So evaluation, really, that's why evaluation is often formative during the program, summative, sort of looking at the output, and then there's the impact evaluation. So often evaluators will look at 6 months after the program, 1 year after the program, sometimes even 5 years after the program to look at impact of the program, okay? So this is what an ideal evaluation will look at, right? Because we may have, you know, what they call low-hanging fruit. I don't know if you've heard of this expression, low-hanging fruit. Like what kinds of things do you get from the program immediately, right? So people see, whoa, 50,000, you guys made 50,000 ringgit, that's fantastic. And it's good, but of course, remember you invested 2.5 million in this program. So the fact that you only got 50,000 back, if you're just looking at output, it's not actually a very good program. If you're just using that as your indicator of impact, right? But later, if we go back 2 years later and we find that, they're making 50,000 ringgit a month now, you've established this economy, people are skilled in all these changes, there's less crime, and the young people are involved, and you see all these changes to the community, then you have impact. Okay, so let's move on. So I think that's pretty clear. And so the purpose of the evaluation is to see the achievement of the objectives of the program. Okay, like I just mentioned. So the data are collected on the performance of the program, and analysis is done on the data. And then it's compared with the statement of the objectives, okay? So, so what are the objectives of the program? Okay, so in community development, obviously, like we saw in the case study, there's immediate tangible objectives or outcomes that we want to see, like they wanted a new water supply, or they wanted to establish that water supply. It may be to establish the urban farm, but there may be other objectives. There may be learning objectives. Again, we may want people to acquire skills, right? We may want people to learn how to do business, how to be entrepreneurs, all those things, right? So if those are the objectives of the program, then we have to make sure that the data we collect is able to measure those objectives. So if we want to know whether people have really acquired skills, typically they will give them some sort of skill-based performance survey or something, or they may do observation, okay? And observation, we mentioned before, is a qualitative method, right? It's a qualitative technique, okay? And so like if you're trying to determine whether somebody acquired the skills of entrepreneurship, like what kinds of things would you observe? Would you try to observe, right? You try to observe maybe how they run their business, how they go about, doing their business planning and the execution of the business, etc. But you can observe those things. So the approach could be observational. It could be survey. You can give them an actual test, a survey instrument, a questionnaire to see whether they have achieved those skills, right? And that could be a quantitative type of evaluation, okay? So the data you collect are based on the objectives of the program, okay? And that's why we always say, and we said in the previous weeks of the class, remember we said that program objectives must be SMART, and that second, the M in the SMART is measurable, yeah? They must be measurable. There must be ways of answering those objectives by collecting some sort of data, okay? Some sort of data. Any questions about that? If not, I'll move on. Okay, let's move on. So, the result of the comparison is stated. For example, in an evaluation, you want to, at the end of the day, you want to say, like it says there, 90% or 80% of the objectives have been achieved, right? So if you can do an evaluation where you can answer that kind of a question, right? So let's say this program has 5 objectives, and at the end you have done your evaluation and you've come to the conclusion that 80% of the objectives have been achieved. The other 20%, they're still in process, but we haven't gotten there yet, all right? And so you can say, you can use that figure as it says there for follow-up. So you can say that remaining 20%, we're going to propose an additional follow-up program. Maybe you found that the urban farmers, they needed more training on marketing, for example. They learned the farming skills, they learned the networking skills to set up their, to get the resources they need to do the farm. They learned how to really do the business more or less, but they fell a bit short on the marketing. They had a hard time marketing their products at the end of the day. So maybe that last objective wasn't fully achieved yet. And so you're going to propose a follow-up activity or a follow-up training or something that's going to address that issue of marketing only, okay? So this is the value of doing the evaluation and being able to arrive at some sort of conclusion like this. Okay, this is very important in evaluation, to be able to conclude. Okay, at the end of the day, what did the program achieve? What didn't it achieve, and why? And what can we do to follow up? All right. So any changes brought about by the program have to be proven. Okay, there has to be evidence. Again, evidence-based. So that's why evaluation is so important. All right. We want to prove that the budget, 2.5 million ringgit, was worth the money. We want to prove that the time spent by the staff, by the administrators, by the community members was worth the investment. All right. And that's a very important point there. The evaluation result is submitted to the sponsor. So every community development program, if there's a budget involved, will have a sponsor. In the case we just saw with the Philippines, it was a church, right? The church has their own program, community development program, and they provide the funding. Or perhaps, and I didn't catch this in the video, maybe some of you caught this in the video, perhaps the church was not the funder. Perhaps the church was the program facilitator. They're the experts in community development, external to the community, but still they're the ones that facilitated the program. But perhaps the money came from somewhere else, and I didn't catch that in the video. Did any of you catch that in the video? Who was actually providing the budget for the program? Was it a government program? Anyway, it's not that important, just wondering if you caught it. All right, so the evaluation result is really for the sponsor of the program. Okay. For obvious reasons, if you're someone that's sponsoring a program, you want to know whether your money is being utilized well, right? You want to know whether your investment is resulting in changes, and that's the whole point. So you have to, you have to make sure when you do an evaluation that you are evaluating for the main, the sponsor or the stakeholder or the funder. They're the ones that are going to get the result. They're the ones that want to know the result. Okay, I think that's pretty straightforward. All right, evaluation as a data bank. Okay, so we have to think of evaluation as a data bank in the sense that it's data that's going to be gathered continuously. Okay, again, too many of our programs that we do are limited to one-off evaluations that come at the end of the program, usually in the form of surveys. They're quite simplistic, and they don't really provide that continuous data that can be used to help us make adjustments, make changes during the program, etc. Okay, so as we mentioned, there's surveys, right? There's observations. There's, as we mentioned, there's interviews, focus groups. There's documents. There's field notes, right? Especially in programs like we saw in the video, where the program staff, they have to go out into the community. Sorry, I'm just checking the screen here. Okay, so they have to go out into the community, and often those people will keep what are called field notes. And field notes are really just a daily, sort of a daily journaling, yeah, a daily journal of observations of what's happening in the program. And that can be very useful evaluation data as well. Okay, so there's different types of data that you use as evidence. All right, a good evaluation should be based on up-to-date data. All right, so the data should be up-to-date, not obsolete, meaning it's not old, it's up-to-date, it's recent. An example of a data bank is the Department of Statistics, who does continuous data collection on the various sectors of development. Yeah, so if we look at the data, the Department of Statistics website, okay, and we can just quickly, let's just quickly go there. Where is, oops, that's not it. Okay. So if we're to just quickly, alamat, sorry. Department of Statistics. Can you guys all see this screen here? Okay, so Department of Statistics, and you just go to the website, they have lots and lots of data, right? That they are continuously updating. Okay, so you can see here, latest releases, okay? Whatever the heck this is, I have no idea. My C Apsut water account. Monthly rubber statistics, Malaysia, April 2020. Statistics of foreign direct investment in Malaysia, 2019. Okay, statistics on Malaysia's direct investment abroad. Monthly manufacturing statistics, Malaysia. Index of industrial production, wholesale retail trade, consumer price index, economic indicators, unemployment rate. See all these different statistics that they have. Even the population of Malaysia is here, 32 million. All right, and there's all these different links, right? So information is power, right? You've heard that before, I'm sure. Information is power. Once you have all this different information, you can make really well-informed decisions, okay? So if we go here to statistics, you'll see here, there's a lot of statistics here. So they have by themes. So statistics, that word is hard to say. Statistics on agriculture, construction, economic indicators, environment, external sector, household income, blah, 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 blah. Banyak, okay, banyak. Censuses and surveys, household income, expenditure, basic education, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we've got statistics on everything, okay? And this is really good because it allows the government and the policymakers to make informed decisions, right? And it helps them, again, to evaluate their own policies and their own programs. Right? So we're talking about community in this class, but for the government, the federal government, they have to make decisions about their policies, right? And they have to know whether their policies are effective. So for them, these statistics are really, really important. Fatini, you cannot see. Can you see now, Fatini? Sorry, I just saw your comment there. Fatini, can you see now the website? No, you can't see it. Can everybody else see it? Nadia can see it, but Fatini can't see it.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Zuleika, Farhan. Okay. Fatini, I don't know why you can't see it. Anyway, it's just the Department of Statistics Malaysia. You can look at it later. Okay. I just wanted to show some examples of the different types of statistics that are available. And you guys can use these also for your, for your projects, for your reports. Just go to the website here and you can download all these different statistics. It's very helpful when you're making arguments in your research and stuff like that. All right, so let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay, why did it take us all the way out? Oh, okay, there it goes. All right, so data bank. So the Department of Statistics is a data bank. Okay, digital facilities, computer facilitates the management of data. Okay, so of course, technology is also very helpful for facilitating management of data. And a lot of those poor communities that we just saw in Philippines, for example, they don't have these types of technology. So they have to rely on more basic, more rudimentary types of technologies. And so, of course, the advantage of having the technology is you can do things faster, you can do things easier, you can collect more data, organize it better, you can do more analysis with it, etc. Okay, so digital facilities help a lot as well with evaluation. Right. So evaluation as a strategy in management. Okay. So planning and implementation are both activities in management. All right. Management needs careful usage of resources. Yeah. So one of the things nowadays that they really emphasize in management, whether it's a community development management, managing a community development project or even managing a business, is the the importance of data, right? And the importance of planning and implementation and using data to do those things, all right? So management needs ongoing information about the program to make good decisions. It's all about decision making. Yeah, it's all about this. It's all about making good decisions, making the right decisions. Okay, so evaluation and having ongoing stream of data really helps us to make good decisions when we are managing projects. Okay, so this is another really important critical element of evaluation. All right, so the idea here is to get us thinking that away from the notion that evaluation just happens at the end of a program. Get this idea of evaluation is a survey at the end of a program. Get that idea out of your head. Evaluation is a constant process of collecting data about the program, okay? And again, when I say data, data is not just quantitative data. It's not just statistics. Management, okay, management in terms of a program answers questions such as, is the program formulated according to the problems and interests of the community? Okay, this is a really important question, really important. Is the program formulated according to the problems and interests of the community? And how do we determine, how do we ascertain the problems and interests of the community? Who can tell me? What are some of the ways? What are some of the ways, folks? Alamak. Who can tell me? No one? We don't know how to gauge the problems and interests of the community? Why can't I see my chat? My chat disappeared. Sorry, are you guys chatting?
Doctor, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Here, right here in the slide, you guys can see the slides, right?
Yes.
Okay, so is the program formulated according to the problems and needs and interests of the community? So my question was, how do we know or determine what are the problems and interests of the community? Okay, situational analysis, needs assessment, what we talked about earlier. Remember, you guys did that already in the class. Okay, so these are some of the ways, right? Essentially, we're doing evaluation. That's part of evaluation. That's why evaluation always starts early, very early. Even your situational analysis of the community is a part of evaluation. It's part of a formative evaluation to determine the needs and the problems of the community. So evaluation starts very early. What activities should be prioritized? Okay, so we can only answer that question, what activities should be prioritized, once we have identified what the problems and interests of the community are, right? And we can only do that by doing proper evaluation, by assessment or whatever. And assessment is a form of evaluation. What should be the action if there's a natural calamity? Okay, so risk assessment, risk analysis, right? This is part of management. So all these things, all these questions require data. They require data that comes from the different forms of evaluation. Okay, evaluation is a strategy for program improvement, all right? So as we mentioned earlier, from evaluation, weaknesses of the program are known, right? Okay, and then those weaknesses or those gaps can be addressed, right? What is a weakness, right? So a weakness is not something bad. It's just something that we have, we identify, we find that there's a gap, right? So in the urban farm, we find that there is a gap between what the program set out to do and what it actually achieved, right? So, or maybe the program set out to develop their entrepreneurial skills, and it turns out that those skills, well, didn't really get addressed very well, but the community residents formed a lot of new networks that they were not expecting, okay? So on one hand, there was a gap in terms of what was expected for entrepreneurship. On the other hand, there was an unexpected benefit that came out of the program, okay? So the gap between the present, what is actually happening, and the desired status, what you want to achieve, right? Or what the objective of the program is. So that's essentially what a weakness is. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that there's a gap between what's actually happening and what is supposed to be happening from the program, all right? Okay, sorry, my chat was not working there for a minute, and I just saw your question, Izatul. You didn't faham the question. Which question was that? Was it the last question?
The first question, Doctor, already
Answered.
faham
Already
dah.
answered. Dah.
Already answer.
Okay, all right. So sorry, Divya. Okay, thank you, Divya. I saw your comment there. Find out the needs. Yeah, make it surveys. Yeah, right. So there's many ways to find out the identify those problems, those initial issues. Okay. Evaluation as a basis for follow-up activities, as we mentioned before. Results of evaluation are used for future activities. Aisha, you're drawing on the slides. How are you drawing on the slides?
Aisha, don't disturb.
No, I'm just curious how you were able to do that. I think I gave you permission somehow to do that. Wait, annotate, unshare. Oh, okay. All right. Oh yeah, I gave you guys permission through Zoom to annotate on the content. So if you want to make notes on the slides as we go, you can like if you don't understand like a certain word, you can just like underline it or something. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Like for example, like doctor, I don't know what this word means. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that. So go ahead and, if you feel the need to, go ahead. Okay, thumbs up. All right. So, yeah, so as we mentioned already, evaluation used for future activities of the program, okay? Also used for reformation of policies. Yeah, I mean, if it's done well, social sciences, the whole point of this thing that we do in social sciences is to really make better policies, ultimately. So, here policies refer more or less to local policies or small scale policies, like policies about programs, policies about, how local, like the local majlis, daira, how they do things, because they're doing a lot of programs in the community. So we want to help them to do better programs, right? And if possible, change their policies to make those programs better. Like there used to be, I know with like the Pasar Malam in my area, there was this, maybe it's not just my area, I'm sure it's like throughout all of Selangor, but they developed these policies about hygiene, yeah, at selling Pasar Malam, and they had training for the workers at the Pasar Malam on how to be cleaner and how they do things and stuff like that. So somebody did a study on that, and it resulted in the evaluation resulted in this change in policy where they began to provide training for the Pasar Malam workers on how to be more hygienic, yeah, more clean, operating their stalls more in a more cleaner way or more hygienic way. Okay, and for duplication purposes, it says here. Okay, so similar programs on different community and locality. Anybody have any idea what that means? What do I mean here by, okay, duplication purposes? Okay, what's duplication purposes? What does this mean? How can evaluation be used for duplication purposes? Similar program on different community and locality.
Do the same purpose of the program, but to the others populations.
Okay, all right. And so evaluation allows us to do that how? You're right, you're right. Your answer is right, absolutely right. I'm just asking you to follow up, to elaborate a bit. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? How does evaluation allow us to do that?
If we knows that that population have the same problems with that before program, so we can duplicate the purpose, the same purpose, and can use the same ways.
Great.
How that program do.
Right. So yeah, so evaluation will tell us, you know, again, like what went well, what didn't go well, and then so that the next community that's going to take up the program, they won't make the same mistakes. They'll implement it the same way, or they'll make little changes in the way they implemented it. So evaluation allows not just duplication, actually I would say not just duplication, but smart duplication, right? Effective duplication, so that the same mistakes are not made. Yeah. Excuse me. As we say in English, I have a frog in my throat. Kata has gone in my throat. So, okay. Yeah, improvement on the next, yeah. Okay, so evaluation as a means to get recognition. Evaluation as a means to get recognition, okay? In most of the states in Malaysia, I know they have these awards. They have these awards for best kampong in the state, right? You know, like most active kampong or most active youth association. So how do they determine that? How do they determine which kampong is the best kampong, right? Well, there must be some evaluation that's done. And so they use evaluation to recognize the work of these different communities. Pretty, you know, it's pretty straightforward actually. And that's just one example of recognition. You know, there's many different types of recognition, but of course, evaluation allows you to get recognition. That's pretty obvious, I think. Okay, a few more minutes here, and then we'll take a break. So I have to erase this little line here. Oh, cool. Look at that. All right. I'm having fun. Can't you guys tell? Okay. So now we have the process of evaluation. Oh, sorry. All right. So I'm going to just hide this screen here. So we first define the focus of the evaluation. All right. Define the focus of the evaluation. And then, so we want to focus, okay, of all the things going on in this program, you know, maybe there's 5 program objectives. Are we going to focus our evaluation on all 5 objectives? Maybe there's only a couple of objectives that are really important. Okay, so we have to first define the focus. What are we going to evaluate? Okay, are we going to evaluate people's behaviors? Are we going to evaluate the amount of money coming into the program? So these kind of questions we have to first ask so that when we go into the program to do the evaluation, we're not trying to do everything. Okay, we have some limits or some delimitations, as they're called in research, in terms of what we're going to focus on. All right. Then we go in and we collect our data, also known as evidence, right? Evidence of the program's effectiveness. So we're going to collect our data, okay? And we talked about the different ways of collecting data, surveys, interviews, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, then we analyze our data and we make our judgments about the findings of the analysis to determine whether the program is achieving its objectives or not, or whether the process of implementation of the program has gone well, etc. Okay, so because again, a judgment here does not necessarily mean the outcome of the program. It also means process. It could mean output. It could mean impact. Remember we talked about those things as well. Okay, so there's different types of judgments we want to make. You know, if we're doing process evaluation, we want to judge the process of implementation. How has the process gone? Maybe, you know, it's supposed to be a participatory approach to implementation, like we saw in the video, where the community is very much involved and they're really making a lot of the decisions, right? And so that process is going really well. Other programs, the people aren't involved at all. They're not involved at all, right? So even if they come up with some output that looks good on paper, right? Maybe they came up with a certain amount of money or something. The process to get there did nothing for the community. There was no participation by the community. Decision-making was all in the hands of the higher ups. The community participants didn't make any decisions, etc. Okay, so judgment here is not necessarily only on outcomes. All right, and then report the results. Okay, so report the results, as we mentioned, it's really very important, of course, to report the results to the sponsor, the ones that are funding the program, okay, or sponsoring the programs, okay. Who else might want to see the results of the evaluation? Who else might want to see the results of the evaluation?
The community.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. The people involved, right? The community. They definitely want to see the results of the evaluation. So we can't forget about the community, of course, even though it was funded by some organization or community or government or whatever. But of course, the community has to know the results so that they can improve, right? And they can know what they have to work on and what needs to be better and so forth. Their strengths, their weaknesses, and all that. Who else might be? Who else might want to know about the results? Can you think of who else might want to know the results? So you had the funder, the sponsor, you had the community themselves. Who else? Organizers. Okay, Andy Nurul. Organizers are who in this case? The organizers of the program? I'm assuming you mean organizers of the program. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Facilitator, yeah, of course. Sure. Organizers, facilitators, all those people that are running the program. They're not going to be the ones doing evaluation, remember. Yeah, the government, yep, the government. The government may be the sponsor, so in that case, they'd be both. But the government may not be the sponsor. The government may have an interest. For example, if it's an NGO doing the program or sponsoring the program, right? And maybe they've hired some outside group to facilitate it. The government may also be interested in the results to know whether this is a program worth replicating, right? Or this is a program the government may consider to take up next time. So they may be interested in the results even though they didn't sponsor it and they weren't involved in it. So yeah, absolutely. Very good, Fatini. Yeah, the facilitators, yeah, of course. They really want to know whether they're doing a good job, whether they're doing their work. So you have the sponsors, you have the facilitators, you have the community themselves, you have other stakeholders like the government, okay? So these are all different groups that the results can be shared with, right? So don't just think of it in terms of, you know, just the community or just the sponsors. There's others that can also benefit from your evaluation work, okay? Very good. You guys really grasp this really well, I think I can see. Okay. So let's answer the following questions. Sorry, this is step one. I didn't see the subtitle. Okay, so step one, define the focus. So what is the objective, as we mentioned? What criteria and indicators in each criterion will be used? So what are you going to use as indicators, right? What are you going to measure specifically? Yeah, that's what you have to decide when you're looking at the objective. Okay. So what are the data and what are the sources of data? Okay, there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of things to consider. What are you going to consider data, right? Surveys, interviews, is it going to be stories? Is it going to be just descriptions about what they're doing? Observations of programs? What exactly are you going to collect data on. Who are the evaluators? So we were assuming in the last slide, we're assuming the evaluators are external. So for example, but sometimes the organizers will do their own evaluation. And this is kind of tricky. Sometimes it's hard for organizers to be completely objective, right? To be honest or objective in their evaluation. But it's true, sometimes the evaluators can be from the organizers themselves. That's also true. Sometimes they will hire external groups like universities, like UPM. We often do evaluation work, you know, where an NGO or a government agency will ask us to do an evaluation of their program, right, as an external party. How is the result going to be reported and for whom? Okay, so how are you going to report the results? Nowadays, we have many different ways of reporting results. Results can be reported through, you know, the traditional report. You can do video presentations. They can do, you know, different types of result reports. And for whom? Okay, collecting the data, all right? So once you've decided all those questions, collect the data, all right? As we mentioned before about how to do that, there's many different ways, okay? So surveys, observations, etc. All right, and it depends on the objectives, all right? It depends on the objectives. So here, if the objective is to see the impact of a balanced diet program among children, obviously the source of the data is the children and the mothers or the parents, right? Okay, so sources, other sources, participants of the program facilitators, community development workers, social workers, implementers. It really depends on who's involved in the program and the objectives. Reports, so some reports, examples could be meeting minutes, they could be final, what they call year-end reports, whatever. What do they call organizations have their annual reports, that's the word I'm looking for. Annual reports, okay. Step 3, analyze the data and make your judgment, okay. So basis of analysis is making the judgment by comparing the present status of the program and what ought to be. So what did you expect to see at the end of the program and what is actually the situation or what is the status, all right. And this is done by determining the criteria or the indicators, right. So if the program goal was to produce, again, 50,000 ringgit in profit, but at the end of the program, you only produce 20,000 ringgit in profit. Obviously, there's a gap there. So the evaluator will try to explain what happened. Why were they not able to reach that goal, objective? So here for the balanced diet example, criterion is participation. Okay, so participation in the program can be a criterion of program success, whether the community people actually participated in the program. So that'd be a very sort of basic criteria of success, but it's one that would definitely be measured. So how often did they attend the meetings? How active were they in the program? How often did they get feedback, etc. So analysis, as we said, also can be done quantitatively or qualitatively. All right. So examples of qualitative criteria: appropriateness, okay, according to problems and needs. Easy or difficult to follow, according to many others. So how appropriate was the program according to the needs of the community? All right. Effectiveness, whether it was effective. So impact on income or other indicators, impact on community psychological change, or behavioral change, as you guys mentioned earlier, behavioral change, attitude, awareness, knowledge, etc. Efficiency, is the program implemented according to the duration? Was it delayed or was it done faster? What about the ratio of inputs to outputs, as we mentioned before? So that would be a criterion of efficiency. How efficient was the program? And significance of the program. Was it significant to the community or to the organization? And was it commensurate, meaning was it in alignment with the resources used, right? Were the resources utilized well? Okay, significance. Okay, so these are all different criteria, different criteria of program impact. And then report the results, okay? So report the evaluation results. So every participant has the right to know the evaluation, right? And there's various forms of reports that can be done. They can be academic or non-academic, all right, as we mentioned before. So there's many ways of reporting findings of evaluation. Sometimes the sponsoring organization will limit the publication of a finding, right? So UPM did an evaluation of the Rakan Muda program many years ago when the program first started, Rakan Muda. Maybe some of you are aware of the Rakan Muda Youth Development Program. It's not very active anymore, but in the beginning it was very active. So they asked us, the Ministry of Youth and Sports Malaysia asked us to evaluate the Rakan Muda program. However, because the findings of the evaluation were not very positive, that we found a lot of weaknesses in the program, a lot of problems with the program implementation and stuff like that, the sponsor asked us to not boycott, what's the word, embargo the evaluation report, meaning that the report would not be made public. It would only be shown to the ministry. Okay, we couldn't share the findings with anyone else because of the nature of the findings. Okay, so reporting can be tricky. Sometimes reporting will not be made public. Okay, the reports are channeled to the relevant departments or ministries for policy formulation. Okay, that's really important for social scientists like us. We really want to impact policies. Some reports are made for sponsors with certain specifications, like I mentioned just now. Some sponsors will limit the publication. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for now. We're going to take a break, okay, and we'll come back. I'll just quickly go through these last few slides on model. I'm not going to go really in depth into the different models. I'm just going to show them briefly, just so you're aware of them. And I'm sure you probably have seen some of these models in some of your other classes, especially if you've done like training evaluation in your other classes. I'm sure this will be familiar to you. So I don't really want to get too much into the specific models, but I will just show them quickly after the break, and then we will do our Padlet activity from the reading from last week, inshallah. Okay, so any questions before we take a break? No? Okay. So why don't we take 15 or 20 minutes? We'll try to come back within that time. Okay. See you guys in a bit. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Back online. You guys there? Ready to go?
Yes, doctor.
Thank you. Okay, so someone else joined. 27. Who you? Okay. Sorry. Let's bring the slides back up. So I'm just going to go over one more. I'm just going to go through one of these models. I'm not going to go through the whole. There's a couple of models presented, but I just want to go through one because I really want to get to the activity after this. Let me see. And the model, the purpose of the models here is just to show you guys, based on what we just discussed, what an actual model that's used in a lot of evaluation studies, a couple of models that are used in actual evaluation studies, and how they are configured in terms of their content. So the first one is this one here by, this is a classical model by Bennett. And of course, nowadays they've made various improvements to these models in terms of the details. But for the purposes of our class today, we're just going to go through the basics just to give you an idea of the thinking and the process of evaluation that has been formulated by these formal models of evaluation. Okay, so this one is called the hierarchical criteria model. It's one of the more classical models. As you can see there, there's 7 steps in this model. Okay, so let's just quickly go through it. Okay, starting with, sorry, so let me just quickly go through these steps. Input, activity. Okay, so it first looks at, it evaluates basically the inputs or resources that are put into the project or program, okay, or dedicated to the program. The activities done during implementation, okay, so that can be, depending on the program, that can be a variety of different activities, you know, educational activities, whatever, it depends on the program. So any activities that are taking place in the program, and the participation. So it looks at participation by the members of the community, and it looks at different forms of participation, which I'm going to explain in a minute. And then there's reaction. So there's response and feedback to the program, basically looking at whether people feel positively about the program and whether they thought it was successful and so forth. And then it attempts to measure psychological change. So whether the program resulted in a change in attitude, values, or interest by the participants, by the community members. And then skills change. Okay, so more on the behavioral change, whether the individuals involved and the group as a whole acquired new skills as a result of the program. And then last but not least is the final outcome. So here they'll make, using this model, you'll make a judgment, a final outcome judgment, as to whether the objectives of the program were achieved. Okay, so let's look at this a little bit more closely. In terms of inputs, that involves all physical and non-physical resources, including participants, okay, including human resources. So some of the indicators of this include the total resources used, maintenance of the resources, skills of the participants in using resources, how the resources are mobilized, etc. Okay, so the inputs essentially here are the prime movers of the program. They're the ones that make the program go, that make the program tick. Okay, these are all the inputs. Anything that facilitates the running or the actual program mobilization. Okay, and then the activities. Okay, so evaluating all activities at all stages: initiation, implementation, and evaluation. All the activities should be listed in the work plan or the calendar of events. Okay, those are the ones we spoke about when we did our work plan class. And then some sort of judgment on the activities. So here the evaluator would try to arrive at some evaluation judgment on the activities themselves. So did the participants find them satisfactory? Were they excellent, etc.? Okay, so each of the activities itself will be evaluated. Okay, and then participation. What type of participation? Total numbers involved, okay? Patterns of involvement. Who was involved? For how long were they involved? What type of demographics? Was it more males? Was it more females? Older people, younger people? And then continuity. Was it continuous? Was there seasonal participation? For example, did people only participate before the exam season? Did they only participate when it was rainy season? Did they only participate when it was, you know, the weekends, not during the weekdays rather? So here we can sort of evaluate and assess the patterns of involvement according to season or time period. Okay, and then there's the reaction. Okay, so how well was the program, the community program, accepted? What was the response like? Did they see it mostly in a positive way? Was it mostly seen as something that was ineffective? And this is usually measured or evidenced by their commitment and their interest. Now, commitment and interest you can measure both by participation, actual attendance, how often they come to meetings, how often they're involved in the activities. That one is easy to measure. Their level of commitment or interest, you usually have to use some sort of either in interviews and stuff like that, qualitative, or you could do surveys as well, but surveys that would look at more towards their attitudes. Okay, so their reaction to the program. How do they react to this program? And then looking at the cognitive or the psychological change, again, trying to determine this by their commitment and interest. Okay, and so again, you can look at and you can sort of measure levels of interest and value. To what extent do they value the program, and their attitudinal changes? You know, as a result of this program, I have a much greater appreciation for young people, because in this program, I got to work with young people. You know, for example, the community garden or the urban farm. Maybe it brought together older community residents as well as younger community residents, right? So as a result, maybe the adults have a much greater appreciation for the youth in their community. That's an attitudinal change, okay? That's an attitudinal change. Not so easy to measure, okay? It usually, again, this kind of thing usually comes through things like interviews and focus groups and stuff. We can sort of gauge people's attitudes towards those types of things. Okay, but we want to look at how their mindset changed as a result of the program. And then skills change. So as a result of these cognitive and attitudinal and affective changes, what kind of skills did they acquire or improve on? All right. Maybe through the program they learned about, as it says, their new technical or technological innovations. They learned about using hydroponics for their farming. They used about using computers or computer programs. They used about using new machines. They learned new skills in terms of, I mean, skills can be anything, any kind of new skills that they learn as a result of the program. Maybe their soft skills improved. Maybe they're better public speakers now. Maybe they're better at communicating. Maybe they're better at networking now. All these kind of things. So skills can also be soft skills, not necessarily hard skills. You know, it depends again on what the objective of the program is and what kinds of educational opportunities you're providing and what kind of educational outcomes you're looking for. All right. These things tend to take a longer time. It doesn't happen overnight. Programs that, you know, one-off 2-day programs, you're not going to change people's attitudes a whole lot. Attitudinal change usually comes over time. So programs that are run over time usually are what result in things like attitudinal change or skills. Skills take time to develop, right? They take time to develop. And then last but not least, the final outcome, which is the objective of the program. So whether the objectives have been achieved, right? And so that type of final judgment comes as a result of all these previous steps, the previous 6 steps, in addition to perhaps maybe some additional evaluation that's done after the program, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years after the program, okay, to reach that final outcome, that final judgment about program effectiveness, okay? So that's just one of the models that is used. As you can see, it's very similar. I won't go through this other one, Shuffle Beam, the CIPP, similar, but it's, you know, it's got similarities. I'll skip that one. You can go through that on your own. There's not a lot there. I just want to just briefly touch on the internal evaluators. So we mentioned that program evaluation can be done both internally as well as externally, right? So internally, it can be done by the planners and the implementers of the program. It can also be done by the community members themselves. They can also be involved in self-evaluation, right? Now, of course, that's usually guided. It's usually facilitated by somebody, but they can also be involved in evaluation. So they can evaluate themselves. Does it always work well? No, but if they're facilitated well, you know, and they're told exactly how to do it and how to avoid like things like bias and stuff, they can do some worthwhile evaluation of their own programs and communities. So it has advantages and disadvantages, okay? The advantage is that the community people, they know, and the facilitators, you know, the people who are running the program, they know the program best, right? So they know the ins and outs. That should say and out. Ins and outs of the program, right? Including all the weaknesses and strengths. The thing is that they have to be honest when they do evaluation. Otherwise, it's no good. It's useless. So the disadvantage is that it could be biased, right? They may be inclined to only highlight the good things that happen, the positive things that happen. They may be less inclined to talk about the weaknesses, all right? So that's an obvious disadvantage of doing internal evaluations. Then you have external evaluators. So you have consultants that you hire. Anyone that comes from outside the program, who's not involved in the program, but comes in just to evaluate the program. And typically these are specialists in the area that know really well about the subject matter. Those are the best people to come and do external evaluation. When I was in the US, before I came to Malaysia, I worked for an NGO that was a community development organization, NGO. So I was involved in community development work in the US. And this organization, it was a small organization. We were only about maybe 10 or 12 staff. And our funding for our organization mostly came from what are called foundations, yayasan. So we had these yayasan, these foundations in the US that sponsored our work. They paid for our programs, basically. And what happened right before I left and came to Malaysia in 2001, that organization I was working for, one of the biggest funders of the organization's programs decided to do an evaluation of our work. And so they hired an external evaluator who was a consultant. He and his team were consultants who were experts in community organizing and community development. And they were expert evaluators. And so they did a very thorough evaluation of our organization and our programs. They did surveys, they did interviews, they interviewed us, the staff, they interviewed our beneficiaries in the communities. They did surveys with the beneficiaries in the communities. They interviewed our leaders, they interviewed our funders, they interviewed everybody. They did a thorough evaluation. What they found was that our program, our organization, was not really achieving its objectives. Even though we got a lot of attention, there was a lot of optimism about our work. people got excited about our work that we were doing in the community. But when it came down to it, when they looked at the, all the things I just mentioned, and they really did a really in-depth, very comprehensive evaluation of our programs, their conclusion was that we were not meeting our objectives. And in fact, our work was not as high quality as people perceived it to be in terms of impact, right? We were not having that impact on the community. And so that evaluation eventually led to the closing down of that organization. That organization, soon after I left, shut its doors and it closed up because of the evaluation. Funders didn't have any more interest in giving us or giving the organization money to do their work, etc. So my point with all this is that evaluation can be really effective. It can be really effective, and it can have major implications on the program itself. In our case, it worked against us, but it did show at least that, for those foundations, the yayasan that were putting in the money into our organization, it showed them at least that their money was not really achieving its goal, So they wouldn't have known that without an evaluation, especially without an evaluation from an external consultant. Okay, so external consultants are really important when it comes to evaluation. Okay, so that's just an example I want to share with you, real life example. And unfortunately, in Malaysia, they don't do a whole lot of evaluation at that level, where they really try to dig up and find, how well people are doing things and so forth. And it's a shame in the sense that a lot of money is spent and we don't really know whether that money is being spent well, so something that needs to be done. Okay, so when you guys go out into the workforce as HRD officers and so forth, really think about the importance of evaluation and how evaluation can be used in your work. Okay. So just advantages and disadvantages quickly of the external evaluators. So yeah, external evaluators can be very objective and they're capable of assessing critical issues, because internally sometimes issues can be sensitive, politics and this and that. So internal evaluators, sometimes they won't get to those really tough issues, sensitive issues. Whereas external people have no problem. They have no problem getting to those sensitive issues. Doesn't affect them in any way. Now, there's disadvantages though. Sometimes they give extreme results because sometimes they want to look like they're doing their job, right? So it's like it's like during a viva, the examiner of the thesis really wants to show that he's doing his job. So he's going to give all kinds of very extreme comments to make himself look good, like, I'm a real evaluator, So that can happen. They're also not experiencing the practical side of the program. They're removed from the program. They're not involved in the program. So they may miss things. They may miss some of the practical advantages, benefits of the program. They may not catch them because they're not involved in the program. Not everything will be captured in an evaluation, all right? So sometimes they miss out on those things. Often they're dependent on documents, which is limited, documents are limited. Not everything is documented that a community development program is going to do. So if there's things that are not documented, they may not show up in the evaluation. And then lastly, they can be very costly. They can be very expensive. I think in the year 2000, when I was working in the States, when that consultant was hired, I think we paid him $1 million US to do the evaluation, if you can believe that. Now, that may sound like a lot of money, $1 million US, but if the organization, if the funder is paying us, $10 or $15 million a year to do our work, that $1 million is not so much, because that $1 million may end up saving them 15, 20, even maybe $40 million down the road, okay? But the bottom line is, yeah, they can be expensive. External evaluators can be expensive. Okay, so that's all for the lecture. Are there any lingering questions? Remaining questions? Where did my chat go? It's always disappearing. Okay, well, if there's no questions, let us proceed. I will stop this. Now, did you all get a chance to do the reading for today? I'm looking for lots of yeses. Lots of yeses. Did you all do the reading? Yes, I see one yes. Two yeses. Okay, let's assume you did. Now, I'm going to just quickly here, I just want to go through this article. I'm not going to go through the whole article. I just want to briefly run through the habits of highly effective community practitioners before we get to the actual activity, which is where you're going to share with me and your friends about your own personal strengths and weaknesses when it comes to community development. Okay, so let me share this one. All right, so here's the article, Habits of Highly Effective Community Development Practitioners. So this is based on a study that was done. Can you all see the article? Well, after the break, no one talks. Everyone just writes. Okay. Can you all see the article? At least one person answer me. Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, so this study was done, and as you can see here, they asked one simple question: what makes effective community development practitioners effective? You know, like what makes a student a good student? You know, that kind of thing. And so they wanted to ask this question, and they did a study where they looked at articles over a 10-year period from major journals to try and glean out those 7 habits, right? Here they actually came up with 8 habits, I think. So they came up with the 8 habits of highly effective community development practitioners. I'm not going to go through the study here. They talk about the study that was done, how they did it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I just want to get right to the habits, okay? So here you can see they broke their habits down into, everybody know what a habit is, right? What's habit in Bahasa Melayu? Anyone know? Habit. Apa habit? Dan BM. What's the word for habit? Oh, tabiat. Betul, tabiat.
Tabiat.
Okay, tabiat. Okay, so the 8 tabiat of effective community development practitioners. So what they found from their analysis of all these articles about what effective community development practitioners do, I really like these kind of studies. These kind of studies are what we call best practice studies, you know, where you really look at what makes people successful at something. I think they're very interesting studies, you know. So community development practitioners are good at 8 things, you know, basically that's what they're saying. And so they broke it down. On the left here, you can see, I'm going to use my little annotation thingy. On the left here, you can see that they have their habits categorized, right? So they have 4 categories: intrapersonal, or the personal level, the organizational level, cross-organizational level, and then the community level. So they have 3, 2, and 3. All right. And so if we look at the organizational level, sorry, the intrapersonal level, okay? They strive to understand their position within the greater scheme of things, okay? They continually empower themselves. They spend time on self-renewal, okay? That's the personal level. At the organizational level, meaning where they work, they first seek the moral support of their employer and colleagues. They build and utilize partnerships and coalitions. And then at the community or society level, they use management and planning as empowerment tools. Don't know what that means. We'll go into that in a minute. And then habit 7, they activate the push of discomfort and the pull of hope in others. Habit 8, they instill an internal locus of control in others. Okay, so let's just briefly go through these. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I just want to go through them so we're clear about them. All right, so habit 1, they strive to understand their position within the greater scheme of things. Okay, so they are looking at the big picture while they are working at the local level, right? Highly effective practitioners were those who overcame pressures by understanding their position within the greater scheme of things. Okay, so they are putting reality before theory, right? They're looking at the inherent limitations of their involvement. They accept the limitations of their own knowledge and respect the community's indigenous knowledge, etc. Right? They understand their status as outsiders. In other words, they understand the sort of bigger context, right? Who they are, who the community is, and what their role is. You know, they have a very sort of humble mindset towards their role in the process, right? They recognize here, this is important, that, and we saw this in the video, that soft issues are just as important as hard results. So whereas the community wanted to produce water, a water system, the organizers realized that what was also really important was that the community felt empowered and that they were involved in the process. Yeah, so that's a soft kind of issue or outcome. Okay, so they understand their position within the greater thing, the greater community. They understand their role. Okay, they have a sort of humble approach, and they realize that their position has limitations, and they have to put the community first and all that. So that's the first habit of the effective community development worker. Second one is they are continually empowering themselves. Okay, so they are continuously, as you can see here, attaining a sense of mastery over the diversity of knowledge and skills required. So they're always trying to improve themselves, improve their knowledge, improve their skills, right? So here's they attend workshops, seminars, blah, blah, blah. So that sense of control and competency, right, that comes from feeling empowered includes many different things, as they mentioned here. Okay, being critical awareness, having a self-critical mindset, having a positive self-concept, blah, blah, blah. So they go into detail here, which I'm sure you've read already. Okay, the third one, okay, still on the personal level, is they spend time on self-renewal. Okay, so they don't ignore their own needs. Okay, so this has a lot to do with a lot of people that work in fields like social work, community work, youth work, medicine, nurses, the helping professions. A lot of people that work in these helping professions, they experience something called burnout, where they just get very exhausted by their work psychologically. It's very tiring, and it's really hard work to be constantly dealing with people's problems and people's issues, etc., etc. So they face a lot of stress and all that. So there's this need for self-renewal to avoid the pitfalls of being severely stressed out from this kind of work. Especially if you're working in communities that are very low income, they face a lot of problems, you know, drug problems, etc. Those types of people can be very overwhelmed by all these problems that they're facing on an everyday basis. Okay. So the community worker has to be prepared for that, has to protect themselves against that. So they have to engage in self-renewal. Okay. So you are taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your health, taking care of your spiritual well-being. Okay. You're engaging in time, you know, for self-reflection and quiet time, you know, and all that stuff. You have good support networks, right? You have the family or whoever, friends, but you have that strong support network as well. So that's what they talk about here, the importance of self-renewal. So you cannot, you cannot be a good worker, and you cannot really help others very effectively if you yourself are not well, right? If you're sick, or if you're, mentally exhausted, or you're feeling a lot of frustration and stress, it's hard to really be useful to other people. But your job is to be useful to other people. As a community development worker, your job is to help this community to help itself, right? So you need to be useful. If you can't do that, if you can't be useful because of your own problems, it makes your job very difficult. Okay, so those first three habits are related to the self. Now the next two are related to the organization. Habit 4, they seek the moral support of their employer, and colleagues. What does that mean? What it says, you see the highlighted section here. What sets them apart from the rest is their habit of first seeking and obtaining their employees and colleagues' moral support. Okay, what's moral support? In other words, if you're not getting support from those who are closest to you in terms of work, your coworkers, right? In fact, I had a PhD student that developed a coworker support scale for her PhD. Okay, so you need support from your employer, your boss. They have to support your work. They have to support what you're doing. So the effective worker here goes out of their way to generate that support for their work, right? It's a lot easier to do your job when you have the boss and the people next to you in the field that are right behind you, really supporting you and making your job easy. All right. So here they talk about how to do that, right? Different ways that they do that. All right. Getting the organization's trust, obtaining the emotional support from the manager, acquiring inputs, cooperation from colleagues, etc. Okay, so that's the first organizational habit. The second habit in the organization is they build and use partnerships and coalitions. All right, so they are partnership oriented. Yeah, you Malaysians are so good at this. I am always amazed that you use your social networks really amazingly. I'm always amazed at how Malaysians do this. It's really in your culture to be effective at forming partnerships and having strong coalitions. So that's good. I mean, that should make this kind of work easy for you guys. They can be formal or informal partnerships, right? But it's all about networking. It's all about social capital and having resources through your relationships with others and other organizations. Okay, so that's a really important part of this work because it's community-based work, right? So community-based work cannot be effective without having those community relationships, critical to this type of work. All right. So successful practitioners here do a lot of these things. They understand and accept their own abilities and limitations. Excuse me. They're able to network and market their skills, to establish good contacts and good relationships, persuade members to share and respect others' interests, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's a lot here that they mentioned. I won't go through everyone. Habit 6, now we get into the community sort of level habits. And these are a bit tricky. They use management and planning as empowerment tools. What does that mean? They use the issues and problems that arose from and during management planning as an empowerment tool. How do they do that? Well, they do things like use planning management meetings as a vehicle to encourage stakeholders to exercise their rights, okay, to teach members leadership and administrative skills, okay. So they use their own position to empower others, right? To educate others, to help others learn about how to do things at the community level, at the project level, etc. Okay, they use them to foster ties, foster trust, foster relationships between people. Okay, so they use them to empower others. So they use their position to empower others. Okay, so the community development worker is not focused on themselves. They're focusing on what they can do to empower and to enhance relationships in the community. So they see themselves as like what's called a conduit in English. A conduit is like a go-between, like a liaison, like a mediator, yeah, someone that brings people together, right? That's really critical for a community development worker. Habit 7, they activate the push of discomfort and the pull of hope, okay? So they use discomfort and hope to motivate people, essentially, right? So they use needs and assets as a way of building on the situation. So, for example, they accept that community members are experts, right? Nobody knows communities better than the people in the communities. They're experts in their own communities, right? So the community development worker will know that, and they will build on that. That's their asset. That's why in the video they were doing that asset building exercise, because these people are experts of their own communities. So they know where all the resources are. They know what are assets in their communities. The worker's job is just to facilitate that, to get them to do it and to do it explicitly. So they asked them, right, in the video, they asked them to go around and write down all the resources. These people already know the resources, but the writing down of it is to empower them to see it as a resource, okay? You see the second one there, always start with the community's felt and expressed needs, all right? Some other ones here, help the role players to take ownership of needs and fulfillment, all right? Put the community needs first and not accept the needs ascribed to it by the government or agency policies. This is a really good, I should have highlighted this one. So put the community's needs above the government's needs. Wow, is that possible in Malaysia? What do you guys think? Can that be done in Malaysia? In Malaysia, the government plays a big role in a lot of these programs. They're very influential. So do you think you could put the community before the government? Anyone who would like to answer? I haven't heard from a single male today. Men, are you there, men? Hilmi, Ashraf, anyone? Maybe they're not here anymore. The men students are shy today. Very shy. Maybe they're so shy that they're sleeping. Male students, are you there? Jamil? Oh my goodness, they're not even responding. Uh-oh. Oh, there's Jamil. Oh, I asked a question. I was wondering if you had an answer for me. Anyone else? Anyone else want to answer the question? Do you think it's possible as if you're doing a community program, right? You're an organizer, a facilitator, you know, say you're doing a training program for a community, and the community's needs and the government's needs are different. And to meet the needs of the community, you have to go against what the government is asking you to do. You think that's possible? Anyone? No opinion, no comment. Sometimes the policymakers will assume that there's a need or an issue in a community when actually it turns out that it's not, right? That the community, how the community defines their own needs is different than what policymakers say. Okay, so this can be a big problem because oftentimes it forces you to have to go against the government, at least what the government is recommending. Okay, that's the whole point here. Okay, so the last one, habit 8, they instill internal locus of control in others. So they are people that are really trained to empower others. Yeah. So they go beyond what the needs of the community are, and they help the community people to instill an internal locus of control. What is an internal locus of control? Does anybody know?
Sorry, doctor, can you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, what is an internal locus of control? Do you know what that means?
Mm. Internal locus of control.
Habit 8 says they instill an internal locus of control in others.
Is it like the one who will be the I mean, like if you the one that people will refer to in case if they have like problems and so whatever, so this person is the one who will give decisions.
Okay. Not really. Internal locus of control is actually a psychological term, and it refers to, as you can see the list down here, they don't really define it here in the text, but if you scroll down here, so here community development practitioners help groups to unlearn their learned helplessness. So for example, they persuade them to take ownership of their current situation, not to see themselves as victims, right? Convincing them that they're people of worth who deserve better. So a locus of control is a belief. It's a psychology of who has control in a situation. In other words, do you feel you have control to change your situation? That's an internal locus of control. If you have an external locus of control, that means that you feel completely disempowered, that the power lies all with the authorities, right? So there's nothing I can do. I'm totally dependent on the government. That's an external locus of control, right? Where you feel the locus of control, or the one who has control, is outside, is external to you, that someone else has control. Internally, internal locus of control is you have the control. So I can change my own situation. I can go out and I can start my own business, right? Or I can go out and I can go, go to a training session and learn a skill. I can do it on my own. I don't need anybody else to help me. Okay, so like you saw in the video earlier in the class, those organizers were really good at getting the community to believe that they could do it themselves. So by the end of the program, the community members were like, we don't need these organizers anymore. We can do it ourselves. That's a successful community development program. They've changed the community's locus of control from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control. At the start of the program, the community was reliant on that outside group. By the end of the program, they were able to do it themselves. Okay, so an effective community development practitioner or organizer can get the community to feel that they can do it themselves, that they are self-reliant. Okay, so that's the 8th habit of the effective community development practitioner. Okay, so
it's like feeling independent, is it?
Yeah, but exactly. And it's a psychology, right? So it starts with psychology. It starts with the psychology that you can do it yourself. And that's that belief, right? That belief that I can do it myself. So that is called internal locus of control. All right, it's actually a psychology, right? The independence comes after that. The independence is the action, right? So you do something independently. But it starts with the psychology. It starts with the psychology of saying, you know what, I don't need the government to help me. I can do it myself. Right? So that's the internal locus of control. All right. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, doctor.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to stop sharing this one. And now I'm going to bring up our, if I can get up here, I want to bring up the Padlet. So based on your reading, as I asked you to do last class, I want you to go into the link, the Padlet link that I provided on the WhatsApp group earlier before the class. And it should look like this screen here. And I want all of you to indicate, based on my questions, which habits do you feel that you have already, or that you're good at already? Okay, this one here. And then which habits do you feel you need more work? And then just give some short explanation as to why you think that is. Okay. Go ahead and do it. See if it works. I'm hoping it'll work in real time, although we haven't tried it yet. But I know I see a couple of you have already answered. Okay, so go ahead and try and do it. Yeah, answer in the comments there. Where it says add comment, just put your answers there. So it'll be like a running list of all your responses, of all your answers. So I'm just refreshing the screen. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to work in real time or if I have to refresh the screen, but anyway, go ahead and try it. Oh, it worked. Okay. It's live. Alhamdulillah. Seek the most part there. Okay. Yeah, of course, since you guys are still students, you may not be able to answer these based on your actual experiences, but just by looking at those habits, knowing yourself, you know, you can sort of gauge, oh yeah, this one seems like it would be hard for me, or this one looks like I could probably do this pretty well, you know, that kind of thing. Because a lot of these kinds of activities you're going to be doing as human resource development officers. Okay, maybe not at the community level, but at the organizational level, at least. So it is good to sort of look at these abilities and skills now to see, you know, to sort of gauge yourself now before you go out into the field as employees. Habit 8, because this habit requires, okay, most of us easily felt sympathy. Oh, excellent answer. Yeah, this is a really good answer. Oops, sorry. This is okay, more time for self-renewal, yeah. Okay. Oh, this is good. Someone wrote, habit 2. What habits do you already have? Habit 2, because I tend to push myself doing something I never do. Doing something new in my life, especially when I require some skill while doing that. I'm a person. Great. What's happening in my life that you never did something? Excellent. Great. Yeah, that's a great attitude to have. for this kind of work. I was trained as a social worker, and I worked in a hospital in a very poor community in the U.S. And I dealt with all kinds of these kinds of communities, and they face these people that live in these communities. They face so many problems on a daily basis, and that kind of work can be really exhausting, very tiring. You feel like you're trying to take on their problems every day, and it can really be hard. So that thing about self-renewal, I think, is very true in that kind of work. And then so this kind of attitude is very important to have for whoever wrote that. Here's another one. For example, I'm building and maintaining support networks. Okay. Do not take process. We don't take all these things for granted, but actively sought and nurture these support networks. Yeah, support networks are very important, very important. Habit 5, because I think it's quite hard to maintain the partnership since we have different opinions. Yeah, I agree. Nowadays, it seems very hard to maintain partnerships. Yeah, it requires the communication and comprehension skills. Yeah, those are the skills that you need to really, I would call it emotional intelligence skills. Communication, understanding people, understanding where people are coming from, reading, being able to read people. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. But see, it just seems like it's hard for people to work together nowadays. I mean, look at policymakers and how hard it is for them to work together. Habit 4, because it's required you to trust others in the opposite situation. Habit 3, because it involves self-care, which I really need. Yeah, I believe everyone needs to pay more attention to self-care. Yeah, and self-care, let's be clear. Self-care is not selfishness. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes in the US, like in the West, you hear people talk about, oh, I need more me time, and unfortunately, they're just referring to selfishness. A lot of people that say things like that. Self-care is not about selfishness. Self-care is it's like making sure the car is working well. You know what I mean? Like making sure you have air in your tires, making sure you've changed the oil. You are also a sort of machine, and you have to make sure that all the parts are working well. Make sure your mind is working well, make sure your body is healthy, make sure your spirit is strong. Otherwise you can't be of help to others, right? And I mean, in some traditions, speaking from Islamic tradition as a Muslim, I mean, this is part of the wisdom of praying 5 times a day, is that we get that spiritual opportunity for spiritual renewal, at least 5 times a day. To keep the engine tuned, that kind of thing. So, and that goes for your body and your mind as well. So I think that's really true. Being a good influencer to others. All right. Yeah. I would say I need to work on that as well. Okay, here's some others. Let's see over here on the right side. Habit 4, because I tend to do this often, ensuring people around me are doing good actually makes me feel good. That's great. That's great. Habit 4, hold on a second. Just want to, let's remind ourselves, what is habit 4? They first seek the moral support of their employer and colleagues. Habit 4, I think I'm good. I think I am not good at doing something, but I always approach my friends who are good at doing things that I want to do. Ask them for some advice. Most of the time, they're happy to help me. Okay, so you get others to support you. Okay, that's a good quality to have. All right, good. Here's one, number 3, because it's very difficult for self-acceptance and self-care. Like in my case, I'm a people pleaser type. I tend to neglect my needs when helping others. Yeah, well, it's good that you're aware of that. The first step is always awareness. The worst is if you're not aware, if you're not even aware of that. So the fact that you're aware of it is very good. It's a good first step. Then you can slowly work on becoming better at that. On making sure that you're meeting your needs so that you can help others. Okay, be a good listener and give a positive influence to others. Okay, that's, being a good listener is a very underrated skill to have nowadays. Nowadays, people like to talk more than they listen. So one of the things that I learned as a social worker working in communities is that you need to really learn to be a good listener, to be an active listener, and a compassionate listener, and someone that, you know, when you listen to people, you really care about what they're saying. That's extremely important if you're going to be a community worker. Yeah. Okay, this is all really good. Good comments from everyone. Okay, so we can just take another couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and if you want to add anything else to the list, I can save this as well, I think. Nothing else? Looks like you guys are. So we have 5 habits that you feel you already excel at, and then you have, and there's 10 over here where you feel you need more work. Okay, so that's good. I mean, it's you know, like I said, it's good to be aware of both your strengths and weaknesses, you know, but especially weaknesses so that you can work to improve on them. Okay, last one here. I believe that the first 3 habits would be much easier to be excel at as we have more control of ourselves. Yeah, I believe as community development practitioner, we should be able to settle down on our part first before proceeding on to the other habits. It's interesting. Yeah, good insight there. Absolutely. You know, I mean, you have, you know, the one thing you can control, at least to some degree, is yourself. And you have a responsibility to control yourself, right? And to work on yourself. And the more you do that, the better you'll be for others. You know, the more of a benefit you'll be to others. So I think that's very true. Yeah. Habit 8, I'm good at helping my friends to believe in themselves. Oh, that's a good talent to have when they struggle to do something. Great. I could talk them through to work things out and complete the task easily by giving them clear ideas. Well, that's an excellent skill to have. That's an excellent skill to have, especially if you plan on being a human resource or community development practitioner. You know, that's going to be pretty much your job. So that's great. That's great that you have that skill. Okay, the hardest would be habit 8. Speaking of internal locus of control, can be quite challenging. It is. It really is, because it's not easy to get people to, because habit 8 is really about getting people to change the way they see things, changing the way they see the world, getting them to believe in themselves, which is hard. It's not easy. You know, it's a challenge. It takes time too. You know, oftentimes by setting good examples, you know, that helps. You know, but getting people to believe that they can be, you know, they can be the source of change rather than relying on others. You know, I think this is one of the things that Malaysia as a country really needs to, you know, really needs to work on, is getting people to believe that they can do things, and they can do things, right? They don't need to be dependent on others, you know. But getting people to believe that is really hard. It's very hard. So yeah, I would agree. Habit 8 is hard. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up. Excellent feedback, really interesting. And, you know, keep doing this work. You know, this is a class assignment, but, you know, it's good to do this work. You know, check in with yourself regularly, you know, on these kind of things. It's really helpful, I think. And it'll make you guys better practitioners when you get out into the world of work, I think, inshallah. Okay, so if there is nothing else, no more questions or comments, then we will call it a day. So thank you all so much, and good luck on finishing up your projects, finding your projects. I hope it goes smoothly for you all. I'm sure I will be, well, I don't know if I will be, but maybe I'll be examining some of your projects. I know some of you, I'm your supervisor, so sure we'll see each other during the Viva for your final projects. Okay, so thanks so much, everyone. Inshallah, see you all
Thank
next
you,
week.
Doctor.
Okay, sama.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, sama. See you guys next week, inshallah. Sama.